They want you to remove your Islam. They just don't want you to have an Islamic identity. That's why they talk about British Muslims and British values.
This is a talk being given to a group of Muslim women in Southampton. They've been invited along to a workshop delivered by a barrister on the government's strategy to prevent terrorism.
But if you don't know it,
The messages she's putting forward about counter-terror work, according to some other British Muslims, are of concern.
no, you didn't.
She claims authorities are lying about the threat posed by ISIS.
So don't believe this nonsense that it's about ISIS. It's not. ISIS are a nobody and they are a nothing. They're allowing them to grow. So they're using them for what? They're using them for propaganda, and in order to show something that they say, if you have extremism, you're on a pathway to terrorism. Incidentally, there is no evidence for that at all. None.
The speaker, Ibtihal Bassis, has in the past been a representative of the group Hizb ut-Tahrir, which rejects democracy and aims to create an Islamic state governed under Sharia law. But there's no evidence these events are on their behalf. She is instead giving talks to Muslim women as an independent barrister.
All we do is talk, and we have strong ideas, and they're alternative to the so-called democratic ideas that they have, and they're not comfortable with that.
She tells Muslim women that living in the UK, they are suppressed.
Listen, it doesn't matter whether you're covered, not covered, whatever. You still consider yourself a Muslim, and that means that they have a problem with that.
That really is utter nonsense. We, as a British Muslim, I have more freedom in Britain than I would have in any Islamic country on the face of this earth. And if these people are going around trying to sever that relationship, then that's not good for our communities, it's not good for our society, and it's definitely not good for our country.
And so they shut you down because you're too Islamic. You're too Islamic.
Well, she's sitting in Southampton wearing Muslim clothing, a jilbab, a hijab. She's a barrister. She's had access to all the opportunities that this country has offered her. But what she's doing is trying to promote this idea that as Muslims, you are under siege, you are being attacked. And that is so dangerous because it's the first seed, I feel, that will make people susceptible to much more dangerous extremist ideologies.
Over the past 2 years, counter-terror police in Hampshire, along with schools and councils, have significantly increased their work to combat extremism. It's a strategy called Prevent. And this is why. 6 men from Portsmouth and hundreds of other young Muslims from around the UK have travelled to Syria to join the Islamist extremist group ISIS. 4 of the men from Portsmouth have been killed there. But those working to prevent extremism say there are individuals and groups encouraging Muslim communities to oppose their work, and say this is undermining community cohesion.
We're here today to talk about some quite sensitive issues, so what I'd like you guys to do is to tell me what you think terrorism is.
Prevent officers with Hampshire Police have been carrying out anti-extremism work with many secondary schools.
When we think of a terrorist,
Hampshire Police say this work is vital. But they face an apparent problem that some Muslim parents distrust authorities that are responsible for safeguarding children. Ibtihal Bassis warns mothers their children could face accusations of extremism simply for practising their religion.
If a Prevent officer, social workers, or even the school have asked questions of your child about their salah, their hijab, who they say, you can say you're not entitled to do that.
My team have had a number of neo-Nazis referred to us. We've had people who want to harm Jewish people, gay people, black and Asian people. We've also had children referred to us who want to travel to Syria to become fighters and to become wives of fighters. We will do everything we can to divert those people, children or adults, away from each of those forms of extremism.
But has Prevent failed to win the trust of some sections of the Muslim community?
I don't deny that probably in the past the Prevent strategy has been misinterpreted by some people. It's quite clear the government wants us to focus on all forms of extremism. Our focus is definitely not on Muslims only.
So why do some Muslim women clearly feel they need to resist Prevent?
Historically there has been some perception that Prevent is Islamophobic. I've certainly not seen that myself. What I don't like is when inaccuracies and untruths are shared, because clearly that's only going to cause a lack of confidence, fear, and further reprisals perhaps, and that can actually lead to others becoming disenfranchised and possibly radicalised.
Now they are calling this revolution extremist, Islamist.
This is Ibtihal Bassis giving a talk on Syria in London last year. She speaks about Muslim fighters and civilians opposing the Syrian regime.
Because wallahi, sisters, their victory is our victory. As their blood is our blood, their victory will be ours. So let us share in it.
While authorities are trying to discourage young Muslims from travelling to the conflict to fight, some narratives from non-violent activists have caused concern.
Allahu Akbar.
Turn into a tyrannical...
The government wants to introduce new measures to counter messages put forward by groups that it says share some beliefs in common with Islamist extremist groups like ISIS.
...is that there are people who hold some of these views, who don't go as far as advocating violence, but who do buy into some of these prejudices, giving the extreme Islamist narrative weight and telling fellow Muslims, you are part of this. This paves the way for young people to turn simmering prejudice into murderous intent.
Making a stand.
There are those who believe forging a positive vision of life as a British Muslim is the way to defeat extremism. With her organisation, Sara Khan talks to Muslim women around the country, while Imam Monwar Hussain brings people together from different faiths to forge partnerships and understanding.
I think if people are going around creating real doubt, and that's corrosive, then that needs to be challenged, and we need to kind of unpick and look at their ideas. What are they saying? And kind of weigh up and look at the weight of their arguments. And that can only happen in an open forum. And if it's kind of hidden away, and that kind of work is being done, then clearly there needs to be a spotlight. It needs to be brought into the open so that their views can be challenged by the Muslim community.
This talk in Southampton lasted some 3 hours. Within it, the speaker, Ibtihal Bassis, also looked at how terror laws have been introduced and gave women advice on their rights in relation to those laws. We contacted Ibtihal Bassis to ask for her perspective on the event. We invited her to be interviewed several times, but she did not accept. This talk, which was held at a community centre in St Mary's, has also been held at Muslim women's groups around the country. And an event had been planned for Portsmouth.
Who goes on Facebook or any other social media and suddenly, yeah, I bet all of you do, but suddenly it crashes and it goes back to your home page? Who does that happen to? Can you have some hands? Yeah, it happens to me. Okay, it means your phone's being monitored.
A lot of these groups and women like her, they do nothing to alleviate the fears that many Muslims I know who have approached me and my organisation about the fear that their children might be the next ones that become radicalised and join ISIS. They do nothing about that. I think first and foremost Muslim communities absolutely need to challenge these kind of groups, messages and narratives like hers, because it's so destructive. When you are saying that as a Muslim, the state is against you, society is against you, you are creating this feeling of, I do not belong, I feel marginalised. And often when we talk about the push and pull factors of people being drawn to ISIS, we often say one of the push factors is feeling marginalised, feeling that there's a lack of belonging. Well, who's helping to create that condition?
Ultimately, the greatest fear for security services is the prospect of anti-Western ideology inspiring more terror attacks on British citizens. Those on the front line in Hampshire say they will continue to try to educate and to protect those who they believe may be vulnerable to extremism. Their success will depend on persuading Muslim communities to work with them, not to view them as the opposition.
Whatever method or means you have, but get together. There's a difference between one sister being picked on and 10. They won't take